He didn't think he'd be here again. Standing alone in the kitchen, stirring a cup of coffee for one. No wedding ring. No morning chatter. No weekend plans. Just the quiet hum of the refrigerator and the heavy silence of a life that suddenly feels unfamiliar. If you're a man navigating life after divorce, whether it was your choice or not, this video is for you. Not just for advice, but for healing and the peace you thought you'd lost forever. Because the truth is, divorce doesn't just end a marriage. It ends a version of you and begins something entirely new. Let's talk about what comes next. Life after divorce isn't a clean break. It's not a magic instant reset button that gives you clarity. It's a slow unraveling of routines, of identity, of the small details you didn't know would matter this much. One day, you're arguing over what to cook for dinner. The next, you're standing in the grocery store aisle frozen not because you don't know what to buy, but because no one's there to tell you what they want anymore. You might find yourself reaching for an extra towel, still expecting someone else to be there in the morning. You may wake up in silence and wonder if this quiet is peace or just the echo of absence. And here's the part most men never hear. That disorientation, that heaviness, that sense that your life has been unzipped and laid bare. It's normal, and more than that, it's necessary. Because grieving a divorce isn't just about mourning the marriage, it's about mourning the version of you that existed inside it. Maybe you were the provider, the fixer, the one who kept the peace, even when it broke you, and now all of that is gone. The role, the rhythm, the expectations, and without it, you feel lost. But let me say this gently. You are not broken. You are not weak. You are not failing at being strong. What you are is human. Grief has no timeline, and healing isn't loud. It's quiet, private, sometimes invisible to the outside world. So permit yourself to feel, to miss what was, even if it wasn't good, to feel anger, relief, sadness, all in the same breath. Don't rush to get over it. Don't numb the pain with distractions. Because what are you feeling right now? It's not a sign of weakness. It's the first sign of release. Avoiding the grief only delays your peace. But walking through it, that's how you reclaim it. Take your time. Your next chapter doesn't need to be rushed. It just needs to be real. You didn't marry thinking it would end like this. No one stands at the altar imagining courtrooms, silence, or separate holidays. Maybe you tried, really tried. Maybe you gave chances, swallowed resentment, compromised until you could no longer recognize your reflection. Or maybe you were the one who let go, not because you stopped caring, but because staying had become a slow kind of self-abandonment. Either way, it ended. And now comes the part no one prepares you for. Forgiveness. Not the dramatic movie scene kind, but the quiet, exhausting, deeply personal kind. The kind where you wake up at 2 a.m., heart heavy, and whisper, "I release you." Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean what happened was okay. It simply means you refuse to carry the weight any longer. Because that weight, the blame, the bitterness, the constant replaying of old arguments, it doesn't punish her. It only poisons you. Forgive her not because she deserves it, but because you deserve peace. Because you deserve mornings where your chest doesn't tighten at the memory of what used to be. And just as important, forgive yourself. You did the best you could with what you had, with what you knew, with who you were at the time. You weren't perfect, none of us is, but you were present. You were trying. You were learning as you went, often silently. And that matters. Forgiveness is not a moment, it's a process. Some days, you'll feel free. Other days, you'll feel the sting all over again. But keep going. Forgive a little more each day, until her face doesn't bring fire to your gut, until your own reflection doesn't remind you of failure, but of growth. Because that's how peace begins. Not with erasing the past, but by choosing not to bleed from it anymore. Divorce doesn't just split a couple, it divides a home. And if you're a father, that fracture can feel like a quiet earthquake, one that keeps rumbling long after the papers are signed. You don't just miss her, you miss breakfast with your son. You miss brushing your daughter's hair before school. You miss the small things, the ones you never thought to cherish until they were no longer part of your everyday. Now, the house is quiet. Your weekends are either too full or too empty. And you might wonder, Am I still a good father if I'm not there every night? Let me tell you something important. Presence isn't measured by how many nights you sleep under the same roof. It's measured by how you show up when you're there. It's the eye contact. It's the questions. It's the way you listen, not just speak. But here's the part many men avoid. To truly show up for your kids, you have to redefine your relationship with your ex. And that's hard, because resentment doesn't vanish with a custody agreement. You may still carry pain, anger, or disappointment, but your kids, they don't need to carry that with you. They need to see something different. They need to see two adults choosing peace, even when it's not easy. They need to feel safe loving both parents, without being made to pick sides. So start small. A calm tone, a short, respectful message, a willingness to talk about school, not the past. And when you feel the urge to dig up old wounds, pause, breathe. Choose your kids over your pride. You don't have to be friends with your ex, but you can be teammates in raising the ones who still need both of you. This isn't about perfection. It's about consistency. And every time you choose peace, every time you choose to show up, you're showing your children what a real man looks like. Even after the marriage ends, there's a strange silence that shows up after divorce, not the kind that feels peaceful, the kind that feels unfamiliar. You come home, no one asks where you've been. No shoes by the door, no laughter in the next room. And slowly that silence starts whispering. You need someone. You're alone, fix it. You might open a dating app, not because you're ready, but because the idea of eating dinner alone again feels unbearable. But here's what I want to tell you gently, and without judgment. Don't rush into the next thing. That ache in your chest, it's not just loneliness, it's the echo of identity collapse. It's your mind trying to process years of compromise, of emotional labor, of distance that finally ended. And if you cover that pain too quickly, with a new woman, a new thrill, a new distraction, you might skip the most important healing you'll ever do. Learning how to love your own company. There's power in sitting with yourself, uncomfortable as that may be. Power in learning who you are when no one's watching. Power in rediscovering your own rhythms, your own opinions, habits, preferences. You don't need to fix the silence. You need to feel it. Take yourself out. Eat alone, not with shame, but with presence. Go for a walk. Read again. Rebuild your mornings. Ask yourself honestly, do I miss her? Or do I miss the feeling of being wanted? Do I want love? Or do I just want to not feel empty? Because here's the truth. If you don't understand what broke you, you'll end up recreating the same wounds in a different package. Love isn't a rescue mission. It's a mirror. And until you learn to look in that mirror without flinching, you're not ready to let someone else in. So go slow. Not because you're broken, but because this time, you deserve to build something real from a place of clarity, not craving. After the dust settles, after the grief quiets down, there comes a moment not loud, not dramatic, but unmistakable. A quiet voice inside you says, now what? That's when you realize this isn't just the end of a marriage. It's the start of something else. Something that belongs to you fully, finally, clearly. For years, maybe even decades, your world revolved around we, sewer. Decisions were shared, sacrifices made, compromises accepted quietly, for the sake of peace, for the sake of love. But now, there is only you, and while that can feel terrifying, it's also the most powerful position you've ever held. You get to decide what comes next, not out of rebellion, not out of loneliness, but out of alignment with who you are now. Maybe you start with something simple, changing the furniture, cooking something you've always liked but she never did, reclaiming a space in your home that once felt like hers. But don't stop there. Rebuild your routines, your health, your mornings. Not for show, not for revenge, but because you deserve a life that reflects the man you've become. Sign up for that woodworking class. Learn the guitar you always said you were too busy for. Wake up early not to get things done, but to be with yourself. Make new friends. Join that hiking group. Talk to people who don't know your story and won't define you by your past. This is your chance to create a life built on truth, not just tradition. A life that makes you feel calm when you wake up and proud when you look around. You're not starting over. You're starting intentionally, brick by brick, habit by habit, day by day. You're not rushing anymore. You're building something lasting, on your terms, in your time, with no one else writing the blueprint but you. Eventually, the thought returns, not as a craving, but as a quiet possibility. Maybe I'm ready to connect again. You notice it when a woman at the coffee shop smiles, and this time, it doesn't make you flinch. You feel it when conversations begin to feel less like a chore and more like curiosity. You realize the weight you carried for so long isn't as heavy anymore. But before you rush into dating again, pause, breathe. Ask yourself, are you ready or are you just lonely? There's a difference. Loneliness can trick you. It can push you into relationships that feel like relief but quickly become repetition. But when you're truly ready, something shifts. You no longer need someone to fill a void. You simply desire someone to share the space you've reclaimed. Dating after divorce isn't about proving you're still desirable. It's not about forgetting your past. It's about showing up as the man who's healed, not the man still hoping someone else will fix him. You bring scars now, but you also bring wisdom. You know the cost of silence, the price of pretending, the damage of being chosen by someone who doesn't truly see you. This time, you're not chasing butterflies. You're looking for presence, kindness, emotional clarity. So take your time. Start slow. Don't try to impress, just be honest. Let her meet the real you, the man who knows what he values, the man who isn't afraid of his own company, the man who'd rather wait for alignment than settle for attention. And if it works, beautiful. If it doesn't, you'll still be whole. Because this time, you're not dating to escape something. You're dating to invite someone into the peace you fought hard to build. And that is the difference between rushing into love and rising into it. There comes a point in every man's journey when the road feels blocked. You've tried, you've grieved, you've rebuilt your routines, but something still feels stuck. You wake up, and the weight is still there. Not crushing, but constant. You laugh with friends, but something in your chest stays quiet. You go on a date, but your heart isn't in the room with you. And maybe you've told yourself, I just need more time. I just need to tough it out. But here's the truth most men don't hear enough. Sometimes time isn't enough. Sometimes strength means asking for help. Not because you're weak, but because you're wise enough to know this isn't a battle meant to be fought alone. Maybe it's a therapist. Maybe it's a coach. Maybe it's a group of men who've walked this road before you. Men who won't judge your silence. Men who won't flinch when you say, I'm not okay. Sometimes just hearing someone say, yeah, I felt that too, is enough to breathe again. You don't have to tell the whole story. You don't have to break down. You just have to take one step. Reach out. Even quietly, even awkwardly, even if it feels like no one will understand, I promise you, someone will. There are people who specialize in helping men like you find peace again. Not by fixing you because you're not broken, but by helping you remember who you are beneath the grief, the guilt, the regret. And if that voice in your head still says, real men don't need help, ask yourself this. What's stronger, pretending everything's fine, or being brave enough to rebuild with support? You've carried this alone long enough. You don't have to anymore. Help isn't weakness. Help is a doorway, and the life waiting on the other side. You deserve it. You've made it this far, and that already says something powerful about you. You didn't run from the pain. You didn't bury the truth. You faced it day by day, even when no one else could see the effort it took just to get out of bed. Divorce doesn't define you. Your past doesn't disqualify you. And peace, real peace, is still possible. Not because life will magically get easier, but because you are getting stronger, wiser, quieter in the best way. So if you're walking this road right now, just know you're not alone. Leave a comment below. I'm rebuilding in my own time. Or simply let us know where you're at in your journey. You never know who might need your words today. And if this spoke to you, don't forget to like, share, or send this to a brother who might need it more than he's willing to admit. This is smart golden advice for men who've lived, lost, and are ready to rise again. We'll see you in the next one.